But I try not to scare people. There's no reason to scare people whenever doing a home inspection. It's like, hey, here's the problems that I found. I would like to see these things addressed. I know you're not going to address them all at one time, but like here are the major things I would really like to see you address first, and then you can start working on these other little things.
Good afternoon. I'm Kim Elizabeth, and this is Dawson Nitcholas with Ivy League Home Inspections. And I don't know if you know Dawson, but he is a home inspector. And you do you mostly work in the Grayson County area?
Mainly work in the Grayson and Fannin County area, but I'm also licensed for Oklahoma. So I jump across the border, as I like to say, but I go across the river and do stuff over there. Mainly got my license in Oklahoma to help accommodate our Texas agents and people that are moving from Texas to Oklahoma.
Right.
And I try to stay out of Collin County, but I do go there every once in a while, depending on what all's going on.
Well, that's good to know, because I do go into Collin County sometimes too. And beyond. But okay, so how long have you been doing this?
I started this business 2 years ago, and so this month is my anniversary. So, and it's been awesome.
Well,
I absolutely love it. So.
Yeah, and your office is in Denison, or do you actually have an office?
No, I don't have an office. I just work out of my house and out of my truck.
Okay.
Yep, over in Tom Bean, America.
Okay.
So.
Okay. What brought you to home inspecting?
I actually, whenever I was in middle school, I wanted to be a nurse, and I've always liked helping people and taking care of people. I was a nurse's aide for 3 years, and I was a nurse for about 9 years. And then whenever COVID happened, and I got into some stuff in the medical field that I just didn't agree with, and so I was like, all right, it's time for a change. So I've always liked real estate. I've got a rental property, and I've done all kinds of handyman stuff. I've worked for electricians and worked for plumbers. I've got a background in a lot of this stuff, and I wanted to be in real estate but still be able to help people, but I didn't want to be a realtor. So I started thinking, I was like, let's look into home inspections.
Yeah.
And I saw that there's a pretty significant need for home inspectors, especially in our area. There's a lot of guys that are actually looking into retirement in the very near future. And it was just another way for me to help people and work for myself. And that was exactly what I wanted. It checked all my boxes.
Yeah, and this area is growing.
It is. It's growing quite a bit.
There's going to be a lot of necessary home inspections.
Yes.
We'll have a lot of new builds, and you do new builds.
Yes.
And new build, actually, some of my worst inspections were with new builds.
Yep, I've got one new build in mind, and I won't tell you the address or anything, but it's going to stick with me for a while.
So what kind of things, just curiosity, what kind of things stick with you with that?
With the
new build that you're thinking of.
Like this home in particular.
Yes.
Oh, so this house was it was a unique situation. So this house had actually been struck by lightning. And so they tore it all the way down to the slab and rebuilt everything.
Wow.
And I want to say it was roughly around 21 to 2,300 square feet, somewhere right around there. And it had a septic tank with it. But like I said, they rebuilt everything, and I found a little over 60 deficiencies with that house, which I feel like that's a little absurd.
Right.
A lot of times with a lot of the new builds, the more that, especially like the city of Sherman, the city of Denison, all of their guys, they're doing a lot better job on going by and doing checks, making sure that they're supposed to be doing everything that they're supposed to be doing. Normally on average, I write up somewhere right around 15 to maybe 25 deficiencies on these newer build homes these days.
Okay, and we're not talking like that there's some paint on the light cover, right?
No, it's like like ducts that have gotten disconnected, or if the house has a heat pump, like where they've maybe potentially wired something wrong and we're getting way too hot at temperatures, coming from the heat pump. I've even had brand new homes where the water lines were crossed, and so cold is hot and hot is cold. You never know. Everybody is a human, and we all make mistakes. And so especially if you've got all these different guys that you're subbing everything out, then you've got other jobs that you're trying to manage. There are going to be some stuff that slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, I try and encourage my clients buying new builds. That it looks how beautiful everything is, new, gorgeous, but we really need to have an inspection.
Yes, agreed. I
because-
got a perfect example of that whenever we get to it. In a minute.
Okay. I mean, then they'll say that's what the home warranty's for, and I'm like, or the builder's warranty, or
Right.
and I'm like, no, not really.
Well, and the other thing is okay, well, you've lived there for 11 months. Like, how hard do you think it's going to be to get the builder to come back out there whenever you're right there at the end of your
Even
warranty?
11 weeks
Right?
can be tough sometimes.
Yes, agreed.
You know.
I've had a lot of people do that where they'll like, oh, it's brand new. I don't need an inspection. We'll just wait till 11 months. And then I get there by the 11th month and they pretty much tell me all the whole problems with the house. And then I'll go around and I'll find a few other things, but they've mainly had to experience that heartache. And that's why it's so important to get an inspection before you move into the house.
Right,
So
right.
we don't ever want to do that.
So do you get most of your clients from people like me, from realtors, or they call you themselves?
Roughly pretty close to about 70% of my business is word of mouth and through realtors. And then the other probably 25-ish%, somewhere right around there, is through, I know a lot of people in the area have been around here for a long time. And so I normally get my other business through somebody else knows me and they'll recommend me to their friends and stuff like that. So a lot of my stuff is word of mouth and through realtors.
Yeah. What percent of your business is sellers that are getting a pre-inspection? Is that something people commonly do?
Not a whole lot of people do that. I wish that they would. And I was actually talking to an agent about this the other day. And it's kind of a tricky situation because there's a lot of times where there's a lot of things that change over the years. And so like if you've got a home that was built in the 60s and you want to do a pre-listing inspection on it, it can look kind of scary to somebody that wasn't there to talk to the inspector as he's explaining everything and going over everything. But like on your newer homes, I would say probably like around 2010 and newer, a pre-listing inspection is not a bad idea. They're going to be a lot more up to date on some of the codes and things like that. Even though we're not code inspectors, there's a lot of things that everything has a code tied to it.
Yeah, you're required, right? Is that how it works? Like if it's something that's out of code, you're required to point that out?
Well, yes and no. Like I said, we're not code inspectors.
Right.
We do have a standards of practice
Okay,
that is through the Texas Real Estate Commission, which is TREC. And so there are certain things that we are required we are required to call out. But it's also our job to inform our clients like, hey, you don't have to do anything that I tell you in this report. It's just my job to observe and report. So
yeah, I get buyers, as far as buyers, I get them, they'll say, okay, so because it's on this report, the seller has to fix it, all right? Or I won't get my loan. And I'm like, not how it works.
Not how it works. Right. Or like for the door going to the garage, that's a good example.
Oh my goodness.
Nowadays they're all required to have spring-loaded hinges where they close by themselves. But you also got to think about, what if there's somebody in that home that's elderly or that's disabled that has a hard time, that door's going to be fighting them the whole time they're trying to get through that door. You kind of take away their independence there a little bit and kind of almost put them in danger to some extent. And I understand like why, it's a good idea to have that, but every situation's a little bit different. You got to figure out what's best for you as a family. Just as long as you don't go to sleep with your door open to your garage with your car, your lawnmower, or whatever running, then the chances of that happening are pretty slim.
I've seen where the garage door has a doggy door. It'll have that closing on it.
Yeah, and then it's got the doggy door down at the bottom, which is it's pretty much makes it useless at that point. So,
do you recommend? I mean, you just said sellers that have a newer home, that might be helpful, right?
Yeah, it might be helpful. It might help streamline things. There's been quite a few homes that I've done. There's been a few homes I've done that were pre-listing inspections, and like I've given the report, and it makes the homeowner go, oh, I didn't realize this stuff was going on. And a lot of times they have no problems fixing it. And so they'll fix the stuff, and then that way whenever they have an open house, they can print out the report and show receipts and whatever else that, hey, we've already fixed this stuff, and this is the only things that are left. And from my experience, it has helped streamline things whenever people are going to sell their home.
In your job, you do have some really cool tools.
I do have some cool tools.
And you end up using technology. So tell me about some of your tools and how they help you and how they help your client.
my goal is to be like, I want to be your one-stop shop, because there's nothing more frustrating whenever you're already in a timeline where you've only got like a 5-day option and you need to get all this stuff done. So I'm trying to work on being your one-stop shop for everything. Now, some of the tools that I have, I'm a younger guy. Don't let this gray hair fool you. But I try to utilize technology to help not only me, but help my clients. I remember like just seeing other inspection reports and having inspections done in the past where, like for crawl spaces, for instance, I hate it whenever the inspector writes up inaccessible. And that makes me frustrated, because that is one of the most important places that things are going to be lingering and things are going to be happening. So I actually have like this little robot. I call it a crawl bot. He doesn't have a name yet. I never have named it, but I know we need to create like a Facebook poll or something,
right?
Right.
Facebook poll.
But I've got that little robot that I use, and 9 times out of 10, I can get to other places to where inspectors can't get to. I mean, there's been times where I remember about this. It was over 100-year-old home that I did over in Gainesville, where the only access, or they had redone a bunch of plumbing and everything was right in the way. And I was actually able to dig out a hole underneath the side of the house where I could get that little guy underneath there and at least look around in this one problem area.
I always wondered, the ones that are pier and beam, sort of, so like they have a little window that you can see that the house isn't sitting down on the ground or on the concrete, but how do they do that?
That's like, what you're talking about is more like a screeded slab.
Oh, is that what it's called?
Yeah, and those are actually pretty rare. Like I have not seen very many of those.
Okay.
And there's a reason why you don't see those anymore these days, because it's the perfect combination between slab and pier and beam, but there's a lot of bad issues with those. Like if you ever have to have any plumbing work done or anything like that, you have to tear out your whole floor. You can't just crawl underneath a house or anything.
Yeah.
And it really does help me out tremendously. Not only helps keep me safe, but like I said, I can normally get a lot of information with that little guy.
So do you have to wear coveralls then?
I will. I mean, especially I always run that thing first. And then if there's any kind of hazards or anything underneath there where I don't feel comfortable going underneath there, that I'm not going to go underneath there, because the number one thing with an inspection is the goal is to be safe and go home.
Right.
And that's the thing. The guy that actually made this little robot that I have, he built it because him and his childhood friend were both home inspectors. His friend passed away underneath the house. He got electrocuted underneath the house.
Oh my goodness.
He started building these little robots and selling them to people. And so I use that thing all the time, and it helps out tremendously.
I can't imagine, because I've looked under where someone's trying to show me, what is that? Or look at that pier right there. You know, and I'm
like where? What pier? Yeah. Well, that, and I'm about 6'1" and I weigh about 280 pounds. I'm not going to fit into a whole lot of crawl spaces, especially in our area in these older homes. But I've got that little guy. I have a drone that I use for the roofs. If the roof is too steep or it's a 2-story where I can't safely get on it or don't feel safe getting on it, I can use my drone to look over that.
Like, if the weather isn't good and you don't want to get on the roof, like, can you still use the drone?
If it's raining or kind of misty raining, that happened to me just the other day where I didn't feel comfortable getting on there, but the weather was just okay, just enough for me to fly my drone over everything, looking over the roof, and ended up finding some problems with it. So I got questions. Okay.
So if you're using a drone on those roofs, you weren't going to be able to step on them anyway, right? Because they're too steep or not safe.
Or they're too tall.
Or too tall. You're on the ladder that high. So that wasn't going to be an issue. But if you have a roof that's more normal or that you can get on, you still walk roofs? Or just use your
I try to get on the roof. But if stuff is too steep, and I am kind of picky, like if there's not like a 90-degree spot where I can lay my ladder up and then safely step off to the side, then 9 times out of 10, I've got to feel comfortable. And that's where most of the accidents happen, is whenever you're getting off and getting on the ladder.
Yeah.
So, but I still try to do everything that I can to provide as much information as I can to my clients, but also keep me safe.
Yeah, you don't want to look like Christmas Vacation.
No, definitely don't.
I can just see now hanging by a tree going, I hope someone comes along pretty soon.
But and then I've got some other tools. Like as far as I know, I'm the only inspector in our area where I have a sewer camera. That's something that I just started doing several months ago. It was just where, like I said, I'm trying to be your one-stop shop where I can provide you as much information as you want. And I wish more people would take advantage of that.
Well, this area, because we have those old ceramic.
We've got old clay tile lines.
Clay.
We've got a lot of cast iron stuff still. And like, while it might look okay on the outside, it might not be okay on the inside. Or you might have a problem somewhere else that you're not aware of.
Right.
I've had homes, because us as home inspectors, we're not flushing what's called solids down. We're just running water.
And the house might have been new, empty, or remodeled, been empty for months, right?
There's been several homes. There was one that I just did just a few weeks ago where the line, instead of it being like this, it was completely broken like that. And water is still flushing through there just fine. But whenever you start putting other things in that water, it's going to get hung up. And I would have no idea about that unless my client ordered a sewer camera where I could see that.
So, I mean, no one's going to hold you to any prices, but because I know the world changes, but like, tell me what kind of investment that is to ask you to run a sewer camera.
Run a sewer camera, I charge $250.
Okay.
I've talked to multiple plumbers right before I bought it, whenever I was looking into all this stuff.
Okay.
I called 4 or 5 plumbing companies around our area, and they charged anywhere between $300 all the way up to $475.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, I'm a little bit cheaper than these guys. I'm already here. Let's go ahead and do this.
And what a big, it's a nightmare.
Oh yeah.
When I have clients that tell me, oh, we just had all
It's a crappy situation, no pun intended.
It always starts with oh, I've got backup in my shower. What do you think? Call a plumber.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, my pipes have disintegrated. They're clogged and it's backing up, you know?
There was a home that I just did this past weekend. Home was only 2 years old, and I'm snaking through there, and somebody had either like a metal stake or something that had punctured the pipe. Now, it wasn't causing any issues then, but over time, the roots and everything are going to grow in there and going to cause some issues. So luckily, my client paid for that, and I was able to find that for them. They can get that fixed before they move in. So that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Well, that's a cool tool.
Yeah.
So anything else that you use that?
I've got a thermal camera that I use, and I'll grab it real quick. A little shout out back there. And this one's a lot nicer than what a lot of the other home inspectors have. There is, I know there's one home inspector, his is nicer than this, but he also charges for thermal, and I don't. I throw this in for free for every home inspection. I feel like I can't do a good job for you unless I use this.
So tell me what it does.
So this little guy, this is a thermal camera, and what it does is it picks up temperature differences. So if you've got some water that's in a wall that it looks like everything's okay, sometimes this little guy can pick it up. There's a lot of different factors that come into play whenever you're talking about thermal imaging. So you always need to have a moisture meter to back up. There's been plenty of times where I thought that it might be water, and I go to test it, everything's completely dry, and it's more than likely the insulation's not sitting just quite right behind the wall, and air's making its way through there. So just because you see a big temperature change doesn't necessarily always mean the worst. So it's, like I said, you've really got to know what you're doing with this guy.
So do you use that for HVAC too?
Yeah, I do. I use it for a lot of things. I use it to show that the oven, that the burners are lit on top of the oven. I'll run the dishwasher and take a picture with it, and to let you know, hey, this was heating up and it was working whenever I was here. I'll go around and take a picture of every single air vent. And also, funny story, there's been times where, especially on flip homes, where there was an air vent was supposed to be cut out but wasn't, and I was able to find it with this.
I saw that video that you posted.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool.
It helps out tremendously. I also use it for whenever I've taken water temperatures. I'll snap a shot of every single sink that I grabbed a water temperature from. That way, I put all that stuff in the report. So I don't ever want to scare my clients on anything, but I just want them to know, hey, I'm very thorough. This is everything that I found, and I just want you to know, I've tried my hardest to find every little thing that I can for you.
Tell me, when you get to a house What is your, do you have a routine?
You know, my ADD gets the best of me most times, and every home is a little bit different. I normally start off in the kitchen, doing stuff in the kitchen, but then, and I'll go around, like I'll come in, start the dishwasher, turn the oven on, let it be heating up, and put my little temperature gauge in there to make sure that it's getting up to the right temperature. Then I start walking around, turning on lights, and start getting familiar with everything. And then I try to, after I normally, here lately, I've been going to the bathrooms and doing the bathrooms first.
Okay.
And then especially with crawl spaces and stuff, I'll put my robot underneath the house. Then I'll go into the bathrooms and start running water, and then look through there and see if I can find any leaks or anything as stuff is draining. And then, I'll do the crawl space whenever I'm walking around through the house, but going from bathroom to bathroom. But then after I do that stuff, then I try to make just like a big circle. Like during the summertime, I try to get the roof and the attic done first before it gets too hot.
Right.
Like if I'm doing an inspection in the morning, but then if I'm doing it in the evening, I try to do it last. So it just all depends on what time of year it is and what the house is.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much for the most part of how I try to stick to everything.
Yeah.
So I stray from it a little bit here and there. But
okay, so the way you do your whole inspection, and then the buyer or whoever your client is, they come and you do a walkthrough. So tell me, how do you go through what you found? And buying a house can be super emotional.
It can.
It's both.
It can be
the seller
overwhelming.
and the buyer are
Yes.
very overwhelmed.
Oh, I've had people where I did a pre-listing inspection for them, and they did take very great care of their home, but there's just a lot of things that they don't know. They don't know that I'm required to write up certain things.
Right.
There's, they don't know about keeping stuff up to date with certain things, and they were a little offended by the time that I got done inspecting their house.
Sellers, I tend to find sellers offended.
Yes.
And like, we just had that, our HVAC service, we pay for it, and they just did this, that, and the other thing. And so I try and reassure them that your job is to point out what could be a deficiency.
Right.
If they're call your HVAC guy back.
Yeah.
And he may tell you, oh, this model, this is what it's supposed to look
Exactly.
like.
Right. Very possible.
But yes, sellers get very defensive because it's their baby, especially if it's something they've taken care of.
Right.
You can walk in the house and know they took care of it, right?
Fortunately, I very rarely ever get to deal with sellers, so that's
Right?
normally that's normally the good
me.
thing. I know, yeah, that's you. I joke, I'm being halfway serious, but halfway joking about it's our job as home inspectors to come in, create chaos, and then leave. So, but now for my clients, that whenever I explain everything to them, I just let them know, like, hey, look, everything with the house can be fixed. So if there's, I never will forget this one house that I did where it had an asbestos tile roof. So whenever you have asbestos, you're gonna have to get stuff abated, which means money. And I don't know what this agent did, but she got that whole roof abated and got a new roof put on. It cost around $100,000, but she got it done. And because they weren't even, their insurance wasn't gonna cover anything with the roof, just stuff with the house.
Right.
And so, I mean, just because of everything that I found in her awesome work, she got all that stuff done. But I try not to scare people. There's no reason to scare people whenever doing a home inspection. It's like, hey, here's the problems that I found. I would like to see these things addressed. I know you're not going to address them all at one time, but like here are the major things I would really like to see you address first, and then you can start working on these other little things.
And of course, the major things. What are the major? I know.
To me, my major things are foundation, roof, plumbing, and then and HVAC and electrical. Those are your big ones there.
The big five.
Yeah, the big five. So, but no, like I said, just with my clients, I just I tell them like, hey, look, everything I'm going to tell you is like taking a sip of water from a fire hose. But that's why you're going to get an extremely detailed report. If there's anything in there that you don't understand or you want me to go into depth a little bit more, just give me a call. And I've actually been able to get those callbacks down because with my report writing software that I have, I can actually make videos and explain things in there that way.
Cool.
So that helps out a lot too. That way, anybody that sees it, they can understand it a lot better.
Yeah,
so,
it makes a lot more sense when you can see it.
Yes.
Actually see it.
Yes, agree. And have it explained to you.
Yeah. I have to say reports are one of the most important things you do.
Agreed.
Because, well, I mean, you have to see it, put it in the report, but the report can really defuse situations that could be really tough.
Yes.
And then, also being able to talk to them.
Right.
And say, okay, this went completely over our head. We're looking at the report, and my husband and I are disagreeing on what the best, is this like something we have to deal with now, or what's the best course of action?
Right.
And you can talk to them and give them your best.
Yes.